Hello, and welcome to the Cinema ATL podcast. The Cinema ATL podcast is a weekly podcast that examines the world of entertainment through the lens of local Atlanta filmmakers. That would be us, your hosts. I'm Michael D. Friedman, and that is
Martin Kelly.
And this week's episode is our second Indie Spotlight edition, where we take a look at some locally produced projects that you might not have heard of. But first, Martin, why don't you tell our listeners how they can help the podcast out?
Well, you can help us out by commenting and rating it wherever you listen to this podcast. Subscribe to the podcast on those formats. And those formats are Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and now on Amazon Podcasts as well.
Yes, and we also want to hear from you. So let us know what you're thinking. You can tweet us at CinemaATL or at my personal account at Badger33.
Or you can hit me up at Marte_Real1.
And you can also follow us on Instagram at CinemaATL Podcast.
Or you can check us out at the classic cinemaatl.com, where you can also hear our sister podcast, Atlanta Film Chat.
Well, all right. So why don't we just get into the Indie Spotlight, what everybody's been waiting for.
Yeah, let's get right into it. So Indie Spotlight 2. So we've got a great lineup of feature films, web series, short films, and even a podcast to talk about and suggest to you. So we encourage you to hunt these down and take a look. We'll give you as much information as we can in terms of where you can find them. And we hope you just do it because these are locally produced and you should support your local filmmaking.
Yeah, and these are indie films, indie productions that are done by local artists working out of Atlanta. These aren't the big major motion picture productions with Atlanta filmmakers working on them. These are produced and came out of Atlanta. So we really like to feature these. And this is Indie Spotlight 2. I was thinking we should call it Indie Harder.
Okay, that sounds good. Indie Harder. Indier. How about Indier?
Indier Spotlight here. Okay, so we'll jump into some feature films first. So we have actually quite a bit of feature films to focus on this edition. The first one I'm going to bring up is a film called Those Who Deserve to Die. And this is available on DVD and Blu-ray or to rent on streaming platforms out there like Amazon Prime and Apple and all those ones. It was directed by Brett Wood, who's a friend of the podcast. You might know some of his previous works. He did The Unwanted and Psychopathia Sexualis. And it's also shot. The cinematographer was Chris Chambers, none other than Chris Chambers of Eureka Failure, who provides the music for this podcast every week. So
awesome.
And I will say he does an excellent job in this one. I really liked his camera work in this, and it really comes off well. The movie stars Joe Sykes, Rachel Frawley, and introducing Alice Lewis, who plays Berenice, the little girl in the film. This is a horror film. It's about a man who is dealing with PTSD, who has visions of a little girl, Berenice, who kind of pushes him to do bad things to people, including murdering them in very gruesome fashion. And this is not a movie for the squeamish. It is very, very in your face with the violence, and it's very well done. But there's some points in it that people might be turned off by. So just that's a fair warning to you. But it's a really interesting story about it's not a straight horror film. It's got a lot more elements to it. It's actually takes it draws from elements of Italian cinema from the 70s that I think it's called Giallo cinema.
Oh yeah, Giallo
cinema.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much like that, and it's a very intriguing plot. You kind of don't really know where it's going until the very end, and then some stuff falls into place, and you start thinking about things that you saw differently. So really well done by Brett and Chris Chambers and the whole crew. I recommend it if you're a fan of the dark horror film. If you're familiar with Brett Wood stuff and you like Brett Wood stuff, this is right on par with his other stuff that he's done. So check it out.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. A lot of great people associated with that project. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely check it out. So next up, we're going to talk about another horror film, and this is called Cruiser. And Cruiser is available for any Amazon Prime, I guess, Prime member to watch for free, but it's also available on DVD and to buy or rent on cable and streaming platforms all over, just like iTunes and everywhere you might uh, buy your indie films or major films. But it's directed by Randy Sir, written and produced by Sam Hensley Jr. It stars Sam's brother, Schuler Hensley, who you may have seen in Van Helsing, and Banshee, and a lot of episodic television. He's a
Hmm.
veteran actor of a lot of things. Also, Lori Beth Sykes from Resurrection, Get Low, and The Other Side. Some people may remember that film from back in the day. She was she was the femme fatale reaper, actually, in The Other
Yeah.
Side.
The other side's a great movie. So if you haven't seen that, check
Absolutely,
that out as well.
absolutely. Some
Bonus, bonus indie
Yeah,
spotlight for you.
yeah, definitely,
Old
definitely.
school.
That's old school indie, exactly. And on the crew, Dave R. Watkins was the assistant director extraordinary, and again with this Chris Chambers character from Eureka Failure, who edits the film. So, really great team that put this film together. And this film is a horror film, and it's about a deranged person who takes over a police cruiser and roams around the rural town and wreaks havoc on the residents. And it's very scary. It's very scary in the sense that this is actually horror that could happen. This could happen. It's about the it kind of you know in some ways contemporary because there is a great fear of police and police power, and so
Yeah.
to get a madman who takes over a police cruiser is certainly a scary thing, and so it's well done. It's a found footage style film. So everything takes place from sort of the cruiser cam, the the various surveillance cameras in the town and other sort of found footage devices. One of the other people I want to be sure to shout out is Jamie Winkler, who's a producer on the film as well. And again, it's for your horror fans. It is a little bit gory too, so I will say that. So be careful about that if you are squeamish about gore, and things like that. But if you're a horror fan, it's right up your alley. So Cruiser available now.
Okay, well, we're going to get off horror for a little bit here, and I'm going to talk about our next feature film, and it's called Still Today. This is available on VOD to rent or buy on your cable or streaming platforms. It was directed by Tommy Walton and stars Jodie Thompson, who also was co-writer and producer on it, and Terry Weibel. It also features Mark Ashworth, who you probably know as a Atlanta actor who's been in a ton of stuff. He's currently on the CW Stargirl show, along with a lot of other local Atlanta actors. But this is a romantic comedy through and through. It's a really enjoyable film. It tells the story of a man who is left at the altar by his wife to be, and his friends feel sorry for him, so they buy him an escort to have with him at the hotel room, which has already been paid for their night after the wedding. Um, there's a little bit more that goes on that you don't learn until you watch the film, but it's a really enjoyable romantic comedy. These two start to fall for each other, and it's just really likable and really funny. I was really impressed by what they did. It's very well done. It just feels like a romantic comedy that you would see on the big screen. In fact, it probably, I don't know if it got released and had a little theatrical run. It was released by Gravitas Features, who it actually does theatrical on occasion. And maybe if COVID wasn't around, maybe it would have got a little bit more of a theatrical release, but it's really well done. And I really enjoyed it. And Jodie Thompson, who, like I said, is the main star in it, and also the writer, he's very funny. He's very affable and just enjoyable. And Terry Weibel, who Um, she was on The Walking Dead for a few episodes back in, I think, the third or fourth season. She's great in it as well, and they just have very good chemistry together, and it's a just really enjoyable romantic comedy. And I also want to point out that there's a full interview with the filmmakers Tommy Walton and Jodie Thompson on Atlanta Film Chat, our sister podcast. So if you want to check that out, go to cinemaatl.com. The link is there, and you can check that out and learn more about how they produced the film and how they got distribution.
Cool. Yeah, definitely. And Gravitas is also the company that released Cruiser, so they have that in
Oh, there
common.
you go.
So next we come to The Devil to Pay. And The Devil to Pay is available right now to rent on cable and streaming platforms. It's also available on DVD. This was directed by Lane and Ruckus Sky. It actually premiered at the Atlanta Film Festival back in 2019, and it won Best George Feature, actually. But now it's out, available to everyone. It stars Danielle Deadweiler. You may have seen her in Watchmen, Atlanta, and the Tyler Perry show, The Haves and Have-Nots, along with a lot of other projects. But those are some of the more recent things that she had been in. Catherine Dyer from Stranger Things, Adam Boyer from Ozark, Superfly, and a little movie called Full Count, and also Jason Warner Smith of The Walking Dead, and also the Sundance series Rectify. Um, this is a thriller set in, we don't know exactly where, but in the mountain community that's off the grid. And so it's about
Appalachia somewhere.
yeah, somewhere in
Somewhere in
Appalachia.
Appalachia.
So
I just like to
it
say Appalachia.
that's a nice. I always liked Appalachia too. That's a cool word. But yes, it's off the grid, and this community operates, outside, of other society, right? It has its own rules, and it's about a woman who has to um, make things right on account of her missing husband has done something that put her son in danger. So it's a thriller about an off the grid society and a woman fighting to fighting for her life and the life of her son to make sure she survives this precarious situation. So it's really well done. It's 100% on the critic side of Rotten Tomatoes, I'll say, and you know I, I,
Nice.
full disclosure, I'm one of the producers on the film. So,
What?
yeah. So I had to say that, just so that, I don't keep gushing about it and people think, oh, and they find out, they go to IMDb and find out that why
Yeah,
I'm
I mean,
gushing about it.
if our listeners were regular listeners to this podcast, they would know that anyway, because we did interview
Yes.
Lane and Ruckus several episodes ago. It's still available. Go check it out. It's on cinematl.com as well as anywhere that you get the podcast.
Definitely. And I want to also mention the cinematographer, since you mentioned the cinematographer, Sherman Johnson, who I've had the pleasure to work with in the past, and of course, more recently on this film,
Mhm.
does a fantastic job. And of course, Lena Ruckus Sky wrote a really great script, and they've been around the Atlanta film scene for quite a while. And this film, along with Becky, is really sort of showcasing their talents to a much wider audience these days. So I recommend, if you haven't heard about it and you haven't seen it, you should go check it out.
Well, all right. That brings us to our fifth and final feature film. Don't worry, we're going to get to the web series and other things as well. But our fifth and final feature film is Star Trek First Frontier. And you're like, what? I didn't know there was a new Star Trek movie out. This is actually a fan film. It's available on YouTube. You can watch the whole thing for free. It's a full length feature film that pays tribute to the original series. So it's really well done. It's directed by Kenneth Smith. The production design was done by Matt Green, who you might know from a lot of Atlanta productions, and he and his team did a great job of building full replicas of the USS Enterprise and a faithful recreation of the bridge set. It really does harken back to the original series. It stars Rob Prago as Captain Robert April, who was actually in Star Trek canon was the first captain of the USS Enterprise before Kirk and before even Pike. He was the original guy that helmed the very first mission of the USS Enterprise. And this tells the story that hasn't really been delved into by other Star Trek fiction that much, except for like in an episode of the animated series. But this delves into that story. And it's just, if you're a fan of Star Trek, you'll enjoy the homage to the original series. It's got a ton of Atlanta acting talent in it, a lot of Atlanta talent behind the scenes as well. We know a lot of them.
Yeah.
Uh, there's Vince Canlis is in it. Uh, Tara Ox is in it. There's just a bunch more, Martin. I don't know. I'm drawing blanks on
Well,
who else is in it. But
Keith Brooks is
Keith,
even in it.
Keith Brooks, who actually co-wrote the screenplay, is in it.
Yeah.
But it's really a great tribute to the original series. And if you're a
Oh,
Star
and
Trek
it's
fan, you should
Stephen
definitely check it out.
Caudell. It's Stephen
Stephen
Caudell.
Caudell, yes. Return of the Jackalopes, Stephen Caudell.
That's right.
The other side, Stephen Caudell. We should bring that up again.
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
But yeah,
And Black Hat's Stephen Caudell.
there you go. We're just name dropping our favorite productions that we've been involved in. But yeah, Martin, you saw this too. What did you think of it?
Oh, I thought what you said is perfect. It is a really nice homage. If you're a fan of especially if you're a fan of the original Star Trek series, it certainly gives you that vibe of the very first Star Trek television series. And everybody, like you mentioned, they do a really good job of creating the ship and the set on there. I think also we should mention, was it Barry Corbin from Northern Exposure
Oh
has
yeah,
a has
definitely.
a has a part in this, and very well done. Good to see Rob in a Starfleet uniform,
Yeah,
and
he pulls it off well. Yeah,
yeah, he did a great job with this, and again, it's a very ambitious fan film. It is a feature. I mean, most
yeah.
fan films like this, are shorts, and and they're there are a lot of really well done ones, but this is actually a feature. So, kudos to them, producer Zeke Flatten and Emoto Harney. She was part of the crew as well. I
Mm-hmm.
remember, but yeah, I definitely thought it's well worth seeing, especially because it's free
Yeah,
on YouTube, right?
yeah, yeah. And John Pruner was also
This
the DP on it.
The
So
DP, that's right.
yeah. So also, I wanted to point out they actually got Nichelle Nichols to do the introduction of
That's
it,
true.
the
Yes,
original
absolutely.
Lieutenant Aurora. So
Hmm.
it brings a little air of credibility to it as well. And I will say that I'm doing some reading on how this came together. They this is like the first cut of the film that they have on YouTube right now. That I've heard the director said that some of the stuff they had to pull back on because of COVID, for post production purposes. So they do plan on tweaking it and releasing a special edition version of it. So like any fan film, any with a no low budget film like this, they're gonna have some technical issues, but it really is a great homage.
It definitely is, and again, I think a lot of what they've done is on par with the original series. Even though I
Yeah,
know they probably would have and they're going to tweak it like you mentioned. But at the same time, it doesn't fall off in terms of if you view it through the lens of that original series.
yep, definitely. It definitely feels like it could have been pulled from that series. All right. Well, speaking of series, we're going to move on to web series now. So we've also got 5 web series to share with you. The first of which is The Misadventures of Nick and Jermaine. This is available on YouTube, so you can go ahead and just do a YouTube search for it. And it's created and produced by Joshua Walquist. It stars Brian Alexander as Nick and Lawson Newland as Jermaine. And it's a very funny web series about 2 roommates who get on each other's nerves over minor details, but things always tend to escalate, sometimes in violent ways and sometimes in absurd ways, or both. And it's just a really funny series, and the episodes are fairly short. I think they're about 8 to 10 minutes long, so you can binge a lot of them. It's a quick watch, and it's just I found it really enjoyable. I was laughing at it. The first episode in particular has some really funny moments, and then there's one with a Klondike bar that is also really really funny.
Well, Klondike bars are funny.
Yeah, what would you do for a Klondike bar? That's the question they try to answer.
Okay. Cool. So next is a web series called Pub Lie Size. Written, directed, produced by Josh Mitchell. It's available on publiesize.com. And basically, as you can probably tell from the title, it's about the publicity game. And these are the web series consists of 3 episodes and fairly lengthy, actually, between 20 and 30 minutes each, and they revolve around a publicist who has to protect his client, his star client, from a television series um, against some salacious videos that exist and are being threatened to be put out by some computer guys. Kind of funny, almost ripped from the headlines. If you remember, there was a certain computer that was found in a computer repair shop recently that caused a bit of a stir, and this is similar. This
Allegedly,
well,
allegedly.
okay, Twitter's going to block our episode now, but basically, yeah. So similar situation where the lead actor's computer is taken in to be repaired, and of course they find some things, and of course the story revolves around the publicist having to deal with that situation, among other things, and among a lot of other crazy things. Um, Josh stars in the lead role, and he actually he's got a delivery a lot like Colin Quinn because he's from Boston, and he's got that dry sort of Colin Quinn delivery about him, and it's got a lot of crazy characters, and it's theoretically based on true stories. So you can see some of this being based on sort of weird Hollywood tales, but it's fun. It got some music in it. He's written some original songs, which are pretty funny. But again, it's on the website publiesize.com.
And just for you listening, we will provide links in the show notes on cinematl.com and within the show notes on the podcasting platforms as well. Um, the next web series is actually a reality show. It's called Beyond the Check Worker Owner Edition. This is on Amazon Prime. So if you're an Amazon Prime member, you can watch it for free. There are 30-minute episodes, and the host, producer of the show is Rayshawn Parker, who is a filmmaker, writer, producer. He goes around to local restaurants in the South, mainly around Savannah and the the islands down there, and some in the South Carolina, some other places as well. And he interviews the owner slash chefs of these restaurants. So these are people that started their own restaurant and are the main proprietor of the restaurant. They the owners, and they work behind the counter and create their different culinary concoctions. And so it's like a Food Network show where you get to learn a little bit about how the restaurant came to be, and learn more about the dishes that they create. And he also normally drives with an employee of the restaurant to the restaurant to find out more about how they enjoy working there and what they feel about the restaurant. So it's kind of an interesting take there. And like I said, they're 30-minute episodes. And if you're a foodie, you might enjoy them. And you should check it out on Amazon Prime.
Man, how did I not get this one? Because I'm
I
always the
don't know.
one. I'm always the one whenever we do our series, our series where we talk about what we're
Yeah,
watching. I'm always watching Food
yeah,
Network
I was
stuff.
watching the food stuff, and I don't know. It was on the list. You didn't pick it.
Okay, I will check. I will definitely go check it out though. Now that I know what it's all about. So cool, awesome. So next is another web series called Half Brothers, and this is created by Delante Seeley. It's available on uniquelensproductions.com. So all the episodes are there, along with some other short films from this team, from Unique Lens Productions. Directed by Delante Seeley, starring Chris Mason and Theo Pelzer. Um, this was nominated and actually won the Los Angeles Urban Film Festival for Best Web Series. So certainly they've already got gotten a lot of kudos for this series. It basically, the title almost speaks for itself. It's about half brothers. One is a sports writer, uh, and his half brother is a ex-con who comes to live with him and never seems to want to leave. And so that's sort of the conceit of the show, is that one of the one brother who's responsible and straight laced and got his stuff together is trying to get the half brother out of his house. He wants to
Mm.
help him get on his feet, but at the same time, he'd love to get them out of the house. And so the comedy comes from that, and the friends who come in and out of the situation, including girlfriends and mothers. It's again basically a sitcom. They're very short episodes, between 5 and 7 minutes, most of them. So certainly not a long sort of investment in terms of time to watch these, but check it out at uniquelensproductions.com.
All right. Our final web series that we're going to feature this episode is called The Real Fake Memoirs of Mila McKinney. It's available on YouTube. It was created and produced by Aston Rocks. These are really short and sweet episodes about a worker at a knockoff fashion store called Booties. Um, it takes place in Philadelphia, but it's shot in Atlanta. At first, I was like, "Oh, this is a Philly show. Why did they submit it?" And then I was like, "Oh, they actually just shot it in Atlanta." And it's just it's like I said, it's really short and sweet episodes. They're like a minute long, minute to 3 minutes long. So you can binge through. I think they had like 12 episodes available. And it just tells the story of this woman, Mila McKinney, played by Aston Rocks, who has to deal with the crazy customers that come into the store wanting to buy knockoff fashion items. There's a lot of jokes about some of these knockoff brands. Instead of Gucci, it's Coochie. And there's a lot of sexual innuendo names of other items like the Vaginet purse, and so it's just dealing with. It's very in the mold of like Clerks or other episodes of like or other series like that where people just dealing with customers who are just getting on their last nerves, and it's really well done. And I think uh, Aston, who plays the main character, she does a really good job of playing this semi annoyed worker at this store. They also have a second season that they're working on. You can actually go to therealfakeseries.com for more information. You can also back the project. I believe they're doing like a Kickstarter type campaign. I don't think it's on Kickstarter. It's on a different what do you call it, format or website.
Yeah, different platform.
Um,
Yeah.
different platform. But they're going to in the second season they're going to delve into more uh, do more character building and delve more into the relationship between her and the owner, and learn a little bit more about these customers. So I think the episodes are going to be longer in that. And I think they're also changing the name to Real Fakes instead of Real Fake Memoirs of Mila McKinney, which is kind of a mouthful. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, so like I said, you can go to therealfakeseries.com for more information. Check it out.
Cool. Yeah, yeah, definitely. I saw a couple of these episodes. I didn't watch the whole series, but it was pretty funny. So I agree. Go check it out.
All right, we have two more projects for you. One is a short film. It's called Remembering Cupboard. It's available on YouTube. It's written and directed by Zen J. Jackson. It's a heartwarming story about a woman who may have forgotten her imaginary best friend, but soon comes to realize what she may be missing. It's it's a short film about I think it's about 8 to 10 minutes long. Might not even be that long. It's really heartwarming. It stars Melanie Miranda, and I'm going to mess up his name. I'm very sorry, but I think it's Kudus Agbelega. as Cupboard, and he does a really great job at playing this imaginary best friend character. And it's just a nice little way if you want to pick me up, watch this tale. I did a little research on Zen J. Jackson. He's an artist and writer as well, and is producing some books as well. So
Nice.
check that out. And then finally, I want to bring up a podcast. And this is not a podcast like our podcast or Atlanta Film Chat. This is actually a scripted podcast. It's called Fine and Dandy. That's Fine, N-I-N, Dandy. It's available on multiple podcast formats, including like many of the same ones that we're on. They're hosted by Podbean Podcasts. They're also available on Apple, all those other ones, etc. It was created by Danielle Thompson Bova and Adam Bova. Like I said, it's a scripted podcast. It's about a young woman named Tracy Danvers who returns to her small town of Dandy when her mother dies to take care of her father. And she really does not want to move back to this small town. She's moved on. She never wanted to come back there in the first place, but she gets dragged into this town and soon starts working and becoming the owner of a hair salon in town. And she has to, once again, has to deal with the customers that come in and out of the store, as well as all the other quirky characters of this small town. And it's about half-hour episodes, and I believe there are 13 episodes in this first season, and I know they're doing more. And I think it's really interesting to see the scripted podcast format. There's a lot of them out there, but I haven't heard of a lot coming out of Atlanta. So it's really good to see the scripted podcast format kind of, having a resurgence, and it's really interesting. It feels like like listening to a radio play, and it's a lost art, So
Definitely.
it's kind of interesting to hear a funny comedic podcast in that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great that there's more narrative, sort of narrative podcasts, scripted podcasts, if you will, being produced, and it's good to see coming out of the Atlanta area. So awesome.
I will say, I know I mentioned Brett Wood at the very beginning of this. He actually had a scripted podcast as well that came out, I think, end of last year or maybe early this year.
Right.
And I can't remember the name of it for the life of me, unfortunately. But look it up, Brett Wood podcast, and you'll probably find it.
Yeah, I'm sure you could find it from just that type of search. But obviously, we're big fans of podcasts in general. So when you're out listening to Fine and Dandy, also listen to us and subscribe to both.
Yeah, definitely. So that wraps up Indie Podcast or Indie Spotlight 2, Indier Spotlightier.
I thought it was, yeah, you're right. Indier Harder.
Indier Harder. Electric Boogaloo.
That's right.
Indie Spotlight 2, Electric Boogaloo.
There we go. That's when all else fails, go to that one.
So if you enjoyed this, let us know, and let us know what you're watching or listening to. Give us some feedback if you check out some of these projects. We'd really like to hear what you have to say, and we'll be doing these as we go on further. So look for Indie Spotlight 3, the return of the Spotlight
in 3D.
In 3D, coming, a couple months from now.
Yeah, definitely.
If you have projects that you are working on, just keep that in mind. Once you have them released, we'd love to, and even before you have them released, we'd love to hear about them so that we can update our listeners on what's going on in the true indie scene in Atlanta.
Absolutely, and the reason we want to hear about them early is because we are back to doing industry news. So we want to hear about what you're doing, especially in town. So definitely let us know in all stages.
Well, all right. Once again, please share, because sharing is caring. Share this podcast with your friends and enemies and family.
And influencers. Share it with influencers.
in that order. No, in the order of influencers, friends, family, and then enemies. And then, once again, we've already mentioned Eureka Failure twice in this podcast, but it's worth mentioning them again for providing the music as they do every week. And Martin, do you have any final words of wisdom to share before we sign off for the week?
I don't know how wise my words are, but I just want to keep encouraging everybody to stay positive and keep on going. And we're heading into the big holiday season, so let's keep our holiday spirits up.
Yep, and speaking of which, next week we'll be having our top 3 Christmas films, so it'll help you stay in that holiday spirit. Check that out next week, and we'll see you then. Have a good one.